Hi there. Today, continuing in the series of books on Special Forces, we're going to look at this book, SAS The Jungle Frontier, which is 22 Special Air Service Regiment in the Borneo Campaign, 1963 to 66, by Peter Dickens. Peter Dickens had specialised in naval history books, but then was encouraged to write this history, mainly by DLB, Peter de Lobillier, when he was director of the SAS. And he lists his sources in the book, and they are impressive. He interviewed many of the guys who served, and the names are used, the full names, which is quite rare. There are exceptions. People are not mentioned who were still serving when the book was written. So most of the guys had left. So the Borneo campaign came about when the Federation of Malaysia, Singapore, and the northern Borneo states, which all had strong connections to the UK, were threatened by the Indonesians whose presence on Borneo, Kalimantan. They wanted to unify and take over the whole island. So a campaign was started to resist this. And I read the book, and shortly after I read it, I was working on a close protection team, and the team had been put together starting on the Boxing Day of the year, and it was quite difficult. We needed 13 guys. It was quite difficult to assemble them all, and one of the guys who turned up and I got talking to, all the other guys except myself were former Special Forces, and I was paired up with a chap, and I was talking to him, and he mentioned Borneo, and I said, "Oh, I just read a book about the SAS in Borneo." I said, and there was a guy in it, I said, and he's telling jokes when they cross border, I said, on a patrol. And he said, that was me, and it was Pete Scully. And indeed he was the guy in the book. And I became friends with Pete, and we worked together a lot, and he also was one of the instructors when I put together the first bodyguard course. And he also introduced me to Lofty Large, who had been his patrol commander, and he told me the stories from his point of view, and I have reviewed Lofty's book. So when in 1963, the colonel was John Woodhouse, who was one of the most influential officers ever to serve in the SAS, and was widely admired. And there is a biography of John Woodhouse, which I will no doubt review. And he campaigned to have the SAS deployed, and A Squadron was the first to go in, and it started a rotation between the two squadrons, A and D. And there's an incident described very fully in the book with D Squadron, when one of the patrols is ambushed, and Geordie Lillico and Jock Thompson are both wounded. They become separated, both severely wounded, become separated. Jock has put down fire and killed some of the ambushers, and they crawl off, and it's quite an ordeal before firstly Eddie Lillico and then Jock Thompson are eventually rescued. And there's medical lessons to be learned from that as well. So you know, the campaign was not without its dangers, and the SAS did lose guys there. So from the first initial sort of forays, they eventually started what they called claret operations, which were deep penetrations, totally clandestine. sterilizing their kit and so on, and going deep. One of the things they did was to have a regular army unit take them to the border carrying their kit, so they would be fresh when they crossed. This was the theory anyway, and in fact Pete told me that on one occasion with him, they actually ended up carrying the kit of the regular guys to the border because they were knackered in the jungle. There's a very detailed description of how B Squadron was raised. Because they only had 2 squadrons initially, they eventually got B Squadron was formed, and some of the personalities in B Squadron talk about their motivation for joining the SAS and so on. And it did relieve some of the pressure on the other 2 squadrons. So all in all, 22 SAS demonstrated their capability to wage a secret war and to win it. Borneo was a very successful campaign, and it did pave the way for the future of the regiment. And jungle training remains an essential part of selection to this day, because it really was the crucible of the SAS, and it's what forged the kind of SAS soldier, or the SAS mentality, which carries on into other spheres such as desert and counter-terrorism and so on. And really good book, lots of photographs, lots of first-person accounts, because he interviews the guys, and it's one of the better histories of the regiment.